Have you ever noticed how some people walk into a room and shift the entire energy without saying a word? They don't shout, they don't beg, they simply withdraw. And suddenly, the atmosphere bends. People start to chase, to question, to feel uncertain. The absence becomes louder than presence. Now imagine if you did the same. Imagine if you stopped reacting, if you chose silence over reflex, retreat over explosion. What do you think would happen? That's where the power lies. When you are no longer immediately accessible, emotionally, physically, psychologically, the world around you doesn't know what to do. Because most people only know how to manipulate you through your reactions, your impulses, your predictability. But the day you withdraw, the game changes. And suddenly, those who thought they had you figured out realize they know nothing about you at all. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves." So ask yourself, when you become inaccessible, who panics? Who tries to provoke you just to feel they still have access to your emotions? That reaction says more about them than it does about you. It reveals how deeply you've been controlled, how deeply you've been manipulated without even noticing. You keep giving yourself away to maintain peace, to keep people around who were never really there for you. You say yes when you want to scream no. You smile while you suffocate. Every time you react, every time you immediately respond, every time you explain yourself, you give away a piece of your power. And at the end of the day, what's left? Tiredness, frustration, a silence inside you that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels empty. You are emotionally bankrupt because you keep making yourself emotionally available to people who don't even deserve a second of your silence. This isn't about turning your back on the world. It's about turning toward yourself. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming whole, authentic, and real. And it begins when you realize that silence isn't weakness, it's strength. Withdrawal, when it comes from clarity, not fear, is an act of sovereignty. So I'll ask you again, how long will you keep being controlled by other people's emotions? How long will you play the puppet every time someone pokes your wounds? Maybe it's time to cut the strings, to become unpredictable, to become a mystery. Because when you stop being available, everything changes. Since childhood, you've been conditioned to respond fast, to be agreeable, to say yes even when your soul screams no. You were trained to believe that your worth was tied to how accessible you are. But here's the truth, and it's brutal. Excessive availability is not a virtue. It's a trap. A gilded prison where you hold the key, but forget you're holding it. People don't respect what's always there. What's always available becomes expected, not appreciated. Predictability makes you a tool. People start pressing your emotional buttons, not because they love you, but because they know you'll respond. They use you like an emotional vending machine. Push a button, get validation. Push another, get comfort. But once they get what they need, they walk away until the next time they want something. And you wait, hoping someone will finally stay for you, not just what you offer. Jung spoke about the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted, to be loved, and it's that mask that keeps you always available. You wear it with pride while it smothers you. You say, "I'm okay," when you're drowning. You answer texts you should ignore. You explain yourself to people who don't deserve an explanation. You keep proving your worth to people who've already shown they don't value you. And the more you center others, the more you disappear from your own life. This is the dark side of kindness, self-abandonment disguised as virtue. It's the illusion of connection hiding the reality of dependence. You think you're being strong, loyal, caring, but you're bleeding out. Every time you sacrifice your peace to make someone else comfortable, you teach them that your needs don't matter. You make yourself infinite, and people treat infinity as worthless. Because what is always available becomes emotional wallpaper, familiar, invisible, ignored. So pause. Really ask yourself, who deserves your time? Who earns your energy? Who is worthy of your silence? Because some people deserve only your absence. But to understand why you've lived this way, we have to go deeper. Why do you react so quickly? Why do you explain, justify, defend, and please without thinking? The answer lies in Jung's concept of psychic energy. He didn't see the human mind as a machine. He saw it as an energetic system, and every thought, every emotion, every action drains or directs your energy. So ask yourself, are you consciously choosing where your energy goes? Or are you letting the world drain you without consent? Every impulsive reaction, that text you shouldn't have answered, that argument you shouldn't have engaged in, that apology you didn't owe, every one of these leaks energy, your energy. And the more you leak, the weaker you become. Not weak in character, but weak in vitality, weak in clarity, weak in sovereignty. Exhaustion isn't a personality trait. It's a sign that your energy is being stolen. Manipulative, opportunistic people sense this. They don't need to scream or force anything. They just watch for your emotional reflexes and then pull the strings, because they know you'll dance. Jung warned that a healthy psyche conserves energy. It knows when to speak and when to be silent. It knows how to say no without apology, how to walk away without drama, how to observe before reacting. Power is not in how fast you respond. It's in the discipline to pause, to choose, to be strategic, not impulsive. And when you begin conserving energy, everything changes. How many nights have you lost sleep replaying a conversation? How many hours have you spent trying to decode someone else's behavior? That's energy being burned for no return. You are feeding ghosts. You are watering weeds, and those weeds are choking out your peace. When your energy is guarded, your presence becomes undeniable. You walk into a room and people feel you, not because you're loud, but because you're rooted. But when your energy is scattered, you become reactive, invisible, exhausted. And the world has no mercy for the emotionally fragile. So start asking, what triggers your reflexes? What makes you lose your center? That's where your power is bleeding. And that's where the work begins. Not to become cold, but to become whole. Because when you master your energy, you break free from other people's projections. You stop being who they think you are. You stop playing the role they've assigned you. And that makes people uncomfortable. You see, manipulation isn't always loud. Often it's silent. It hides in guilt, in obligation, in roles you didn't agree to but feel forced to play. You think you're making conscious choices, but most of your reactions are programmed. And those who understand that can control you without lifting a finger. Jung called this projection, the act of placing our unconscious emotions onto others. But projection works both ways. Others project onto you, and if you're too emotionally available, you absorb it all. You become a character in someone else's drama, the savior, the comforter, the emotional sponge, and they keep you there with just enough praise, just enough guilt, just enough fear of abandonment. The most effective manipulation is subtle. It whispers, "You're needed. Don't leave. You owe this." And you believe it until it burns you alive. But here's the truth. Manipulators don't need to change you. They just need you to keep reacting the same way. Once you stop reacting, the illusion collapses. They can't control what they can't predict. They can't guilt what refuses to explain itself. And that silence, that refusal to play the role, terrifies them. Not because you're wrong, but because now they have to look at themselves. And most people would rather destroy you than confront their own reflection. And this is why your silence is dangerous. Jung said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. When you withdraw, the shadow of the other begins to emerge. Your absence unmasks them, and that's when the backlash comes, the accusations, the drama, the guilt trips. Not because you're cruel, but because you stopped being useful. You were never loved. You were used. And now, your refusal becomes a rebellion. Your silence becomes war. The world is noisy. Everyone's speaking, arguing, performing. But power, real power, is silent, not passive, not fearful, but intentional. The kind of silence that strips illusions, that reveals truth, that unbalances anyone who fed off your reaction. Jung knew that individuation requires silence, because only in silence can you hear yourself. But silence has a price. You will be misunderstood. You will be called distant, arrogant, selfish. That's fine. Because most people never wanted you. They wanted access to you, to what you gave them. But once you become unavailable, they are forced to face the void inside themselves. And that void is terrifying. So, let the silence do its work. Let it disturb them. Let it rebuild you, because silence is not retreat. It's refinement, sovereignty, mastery. The less you explain, the more powerful you become. The less you react, the more peace you create. And when you speak again, every word will carry weight. Every sentence will be sacred. Because now, not everyone gets to hear your truth. Silence is how you reclaim your soul. But what happens next? What happens after you withdraw? After the guilt? After the backlash? What's left? At first, it's silence. Uncomfortable, deafening, lonely. You'll doubt yourself. You'll question your choices. But then, clarity comes. And in that clarity, peace, power, wholeness. You stop betraying yourself to belong. You stop begging for crumbs and start demanding a feast or walking away in hunger. Because now you know, solitude is not emptiness. It's presence. Yours. You don't need an audience. You need alignment. You don't need to be liked. You need to be true. You don't need to be understood. You need to be free. And that's what individuation is. Returning to your own center. Refusing to be shaped by the collective. Rebuilding your identity from within. You may lose people, but you'll find yourself. You may be rejected, but you'll be real. And what's real lasts. So now I'll leave you with one final question. Are you ready to be misunderstood in order to be free? Are you ready to walk alone so you can finally come home to yourself? If this message resonated with you, write in the comments, "I choose my peace." Let's see how many are ready to live in silence, with strength. And when you're ready for the next step in this journey, hit play on the next video. It's time to go deeper than you ever have before. We'll see you there.